I guess, Alyssa, on the Max Rose, we can talk about both.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know where I got that link from, but that's what we've been promoting so far.
Okay. I think we're live. Is that right, Seamus?
Uh, Hold on. I'm just waiting for the link to this way now. We should be live now. Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, everybody. All right, we're 3 viewers. Perfect. Hey, everybody. Welcome to IND. Welcome to our October meeting. We have a very packed show for you tonight. This is the first of our endorsement meetings where we start to see candidates for 2021 campaigns. We will be making an endorsement in January in all of these races, but there are a number of candidates, large number of candidates for mayor, for comptroller, for borough president. The city council races have a number of candidates. So there's a lot of folks that we need to make sure we get through and give everybody an opportunity to hear from the candidates, to ask them questions and get you as much information as you can to help you make your decision. So we're going to begin that process tonight. I know it's a little strange, even though we're not through the 2020 election yet. But you know, there's a good time for political junkies like us and for people who are just interested in starting to get into politics. So hopefully you're as excited about it as we are. Before we get to the candidates and the rest of our program tonight, I just want to run through a few items of interest, things that we've been up to here at the club, ways that we've been helping out candidates who are on the ballot in the next couple of weeks. Some opportunities for you coming up, and some ways that you can continue staying involved right up through the election. So, you know, we've had a lot of great phone banks lately, very successful activity. We've been doing work for local candidates and state candidates and federal candidates. Just recently, we've had great phone banks for Andrew Goodnardis down in the south of Brooklyn, for Max Rose on Staten Island and also South Brooklyn. We've been doing phone calls for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We just did one for Jamie Harrison in South Carolina. That was wonderful. Some fantastic accents there. We did Matilda Frentis this last week, and we've got a couple of great upcoming events. I'm going to throw it to my colleague, Alyssa Meyer, to just mention a couple of upcoming events and how people can find out a little more about them.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So yeah, we've had a packed couple of weeks and just a few more to go, just nearing election day here. So we have a lot of great events coming up, and we're going to be doing featured events in the IND newsletter, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled for that. You can always find out what's going on at indbrooklyn.org and check out our calendar. But just naming a couple of events, we have a couple of events for Max Rose, our neighbor to the south. We're doing both a phone bank and a canvas, if you feel comfortable doing that. You can learn a bit more about that on the calendar for information. I believe the phone bank is noon to 3, and the canvas is a little bit later in the afternoon. We'll also be phone banking for Andrew Goodnardis on Monday as well. So a couple of events just to get involved straight away, and really looking forward to crunch time with you all.
Fantastic. And for everybody who's watching on Facebook, and just a note for the candidates who've joined us already, we'll have candidates and speakers here on the Zoom, but this is streaming to Facebook, where we'll have a number of folks watching both live, and then I know a lot of people watch the video in the coming days as well. So for everybody who's watching on Facebook, Tyler Rocky should be dropping some links to those campaign events in the comments soon. So keep an eye out for that. You can sign up for the phone bank, for the canvas on Saturday for Max, for the calls for Andrew. And you're probably seeing some of the same TV I am. The National Republicans have been dropping a fortune on Max. They're running some really misleading ads claiming that he's taken positions that he didn't take, and really trying to go after him. He's in one of the most endangered House seats, I think, in the whole country. So we really had his back in 2018. That was a great victory. We've been putting in a lot of work for him, and let's try and make sure we help him get over the finish line this time too. Same thing with Andrew. There's a guy named Ron Lauder who is a billionaire friend of Donald Trump, and has been put a lot of money in to attack 3 or 4 potentially vulnerable Democratic senators here in the state. Andrew's one of them. They're running all kinds of misleading ads against him. So we've been doing a lot of work to try and help him as much as possible. So please join us for those events. Wanted to mention early voting coming up, starts October 24th. We've been encouraging folks to vote early. You can vote by mail if you need to, but we really want to make sure we've got a nice, loud voice on election night. We know Donald Trump is going to try and manipulate things. We know he's going to pretend he didn't lose and pretend everything's fraud. I think the best defense against that is a huge victory on election night, both with the critical electoral college, but also with the popular vote. And so make sure you're voting early. You can find information on that at voting.nyc. Good way to get there, vote safely, socially distanced, and hopefully you won't have to wait in line as long. And so I think that'll be a good option for a lot of people. In an effort tonight, I mentioned already, we've got a lot of candidates. In an effort to streamline things and make the most of your time, we're not going to have the district leaders do their updates as they usually would. I'll just pass along some information from them about county committee. For all of you county committee members, there's been some tricks, some games being played by the county party about how the general organizing meeting to take place in the fall. We will get an update on that from our district leaders shortly. They're in conversations. I want to thank everybody who signed a letter that we worked on, emphasizing how important it is for full participation in those county committee, in that organizing meeting, and making sure we get all of our folks heard and able to participate. So I want to thank Jesse Pierce and Josh Taylor for that, and keep an eye out for more information from them going forward. I want to mention something that Alyssa mentioned earlier on our website, indbrooklyn.org. There's also options in addition to the calendar and a way to see upcoming events. There's also an option to renew your membership, to pay your dues, to join our email list if you haven't already. You might want to take a second tonight and just pop over there, renew your membership. In order to vote in our endorsement meeting in January, you need to have attended 3 events this year and paid your dues. And so as we attend and try to take attendance at these meetings, it's a good reminder to make a comment, to like, or somehow demonstrate that you're here, you're paying attention. We'll make sure to count it as attendance. Seamus Campbell, I just got a call from Zellner. He's looking for his Zoom link. If you can help him with that, if you don't mind. I know you're working on it. Okay, very good. So just to give you an idea of how things are going to work tonight and going forward, we will hear from a number of candidates tonight who are running for mayor, a number of candidates who are running for comptroller. There's a number of other races this year, city council and borough president, and we'll hear from Jumani. I don't know that anybody's challenging him yet for public advocate. So far, I haven't seen anybody, but we'll have a chance to weigh in and endorse him as well. So we'll have candidates with us tonight, in November and in December, and then in January, we'll have the endorsement meeting. And that'll be a chance for folks to talk about what they've seen, what they're feeling, and weigh in, and then we'll endorse, and the club will take part and then do petitioning for candidates. So I see that we've just been joined by our Assemblywoman, Joanne Simon. Joanne, we've got Zellner, and then we're going to get to the candidates, but do you want to quickly say a couple of words? I know you've been active lately, and I know you've got another event to get to, but do you want to say hello and just give us an idea of what's going on with you?
Okay. I thought I was closing out the show tonight.
You can do that too.
Anyway, I'm glad to see everybody here, and I want to thank all the speakers this evening who are coming, who are running for various offices. I've been really busy, as you can imagine. We've been busy protesting. I was out the other day at an event to push back on the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. And as you know, I've been working on pulling together some stuff that I'm working on for the future. But in the meantime, we're making sure that everybody knows about the census. As you know, tonight at midnight, the end of the ability for people to fill out their census information because of the Supreme Court's recent ruling staying the lower court order. And that's just really a very unhappy thing. But it is something we're going to have to deal with, and we want to really encourage everybody as strongly as we can to complete the census right away. And And that's, pretty much what I've been doing. I don't know if there's something in particular you wanted me to address.
Nope, just curious to hear from you and have you check in before we start getting all these candidates. I know Zellner Myrie is working on coming in. Oh, there he is right there. Perfect. So
Okay.
Senator, we're just finishing up some club business. We've got a number of citywide candidates lined up to talk about their plans for next year, but I really wanted to make sure we heard from you. I know you were sick at our last meeting, and you had an interesting summer like all of us. And I wanted to give you a chance to talk about what you've been working on, what your plans are going forward. And I'll mention, you can talk about whatever you like, of course, but many of us were involved with demonstrations this summer. And you had a particular incident and I thought showed really great leadership on some of those issues that we dealt with this summer. And maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator Zellner Myrie.
Thank you for having me. Apologies for the technical difficulties. What's up, IND? I realize that I am the warm-up act. There are many more important people that you want to hear from on the citywide level. And so I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. Also, apologies for the background. This is just Brooklyn noise, as all of you are very familiar with. But I really am honored always to come before the club. I want to start by saying thank you for all of the work that you already do, that you are doing. It's really, really important. Look, there are a lot of things happening in our country, in our state, and in our city right now. We have a reckoning with the racism built into the structure and DNA of our country. I went out and demonstrated in June after George Floyd was murdered. I was pepper sprayed and arrested by the NYPD as a peaceful protester. And 12 days later, thanks to many of my colleagues who I see on this call right now, we were able to pass sweeping police reforms that I believe were just the first step. We also are dealing with an uptick in gun violence in our communities that I think has devastated us on a level that we have not seen in the past, given the pandemic that we're going through. And there's a lot more work for us to do there as well. We are on the precipice of an eviction crisis for our commercial tenants and our residential tenants. Our homeowners have not received relief from the federal government. They are going through it as well. There's a lot of work to be done there. But all of that, I hate to say it, pales in comparison to the job we have before us in the next 3 weeks. We must defeat this president. We have to defeat Donald Trump. And all of you know this. I'm not saying anything that you don't know. But I stand ready to work on all of those things that I mentioned, including our democracy that has been under attack by this federal administration. We know that our local board of election, there is work to be done there as well. And there is a conversation to be had on reform and further election laws that will open up our democracy. As chair of the elections committee, I stand ready to have that discussion and make the changes that are necessary. But that will not matter if we do not defeat this president. And so I just want to encourage all of you. I know we have some really awesome citywide candidates that you're going to hear from and prod and get the information that you need to. But we have to do everything in our power to defeat this president. As a member of the state Senate, we have to increase our majority. And I think we have a really good opportunity to do that. We're playing in about 14 races across the state. I feel good that we can cross that 43 threshold that will allow us to have a super majority and to do a lot of the things that my colleagues in the assembly, like Assemblymember Joanne Simon, have been passing for years and pushing for years. I think it's going to be really helpful for us to push more progressive legislation forward. So I'm very excited. There's a lot of things to be sad and anxious about, but I'm hopeful because I know that we are able and we have demonstrated that we can answer the call. In 2018, when no one thought that we could capture the state Senate and people said, no, there's too much money and too much entrenchment and the establishment is too strong. It was because of clubs like IND that stood on the train stations in the cold, got the signatures, believed that we can do it. And we were able to do life-changing legislation in 2019 and 20. We can do it again. And we have to do it from top to bottom. And so I just want to send my heartfelt thanks to the entire club. Please, please, please do not lose faith. Once we get past November 3rd and we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we will then have further work to do once the administration takes hold. So thank you so much to everyone, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there's time for that. But just wanted to say, express my gratitude to everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. And maybe Alyssa, you can see if there's any questions, but I'll just mention in the meantime, those are some of my favorite memories from 2018 was those subway stops that you mentioned and all that work that we did. And you're right, it was absolutely worth it. And we had really life-changing legislation, and we look forward to what everybody's going to do going forward. Before you jumped on, we were just talking about some of the work we're doing with the club for Andrew Gounardes in South Brooklyn.
Yes.
I know there's been a real target, a real effort from some millionaires and billionaires trying to take aim at some of our senators that won these seats new. You know, maybe can you talk a little bit about that effort? You talked about maybe we'll able to approach a supermajority. We're also, I assume, defending some of our folks who are really under attack right now.
We absolutely are. It is good to see Kenan on the call. We have been in the trenches together, working on some of the legislation that these opposing forces are using now to take out some of our incumbents. And people like Andrew Gounardes, people like Jen Metzger, people like Rachel May, who took hard votes to advance progressive legislation, are now, you know, I think really our opponents are trying to make caricatures of their efforts to help every New Yorker. And so it's just as important for us to defend the folks that we have now as it is to pick up some of these seats. Hi, how are you? How you doing? Good to see you. What is really, I think, insidious about this effort is that it's not grassroots like what we have on our side. This is the work of very wealthy individuals who have had their interests threatened by progressive legislation. This is the work of law enforcement unions and other unions that have been against every reform to the criminal legal system, who are seeing their political power wane. This is their last gasp, much like what we see at the federal level, where there are a concerted effort to suppress the vote. We just saw, much to my lament, that we ended the census 11:59 Hawaii time tonight because the Trump administration has tried to suppress that inclusion. We're seeing that right here in Southern Brooklyn. And so it is so important that all of us, please do everything that you can to fight back against the lies. They have the money, we have the people, and the people are where the power is. So we can do this and keep pushing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your hopeful outlook on this. You know, you giving us encouragement is good energy for continuing this fight. So now we're going to move towards our 2021 candidates. And I'll just reiterate, I've seen the viewers growing. So I think we've got some people on who maybe didn't hear in the beginning. Just an idea of how this is going to work. We're going to hear from a number of candidates tonight for comptroller and for mayor. And then in January, we will have our endorsement meeting where we will vote on all of the races. So there's a ton of candidates for citywide office, for city council, for borough president. And so we're going to hear from a number of folks tonight. We'll continue hearing from people in November and in December, including from 33rd Council District, 39th Council District, borough president. And there's some folks running for mayor and comptroller who couldn't be here tonight, and some of them will join us over those meetings as well. And then in January, we'll make endorsements across the board and then petition for these candidates and help our preferred candidates get on the ballot and back everybody. So we'll start that process right now. He was here early, and I want to say thank you very much. David Weprin, who's an assembly member from the 24th District in Queens. He was previously a member of the New York City Council, was deputy superintendent of the New York State Banking Commission. He's was kind enough to join us. He's running for comptroller tonight. I want to turn things over to Assembly Member Weprin. Just a reminder, we'll speak for 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll do some questions. People who have questions for you can drop them into the comments as you speak. Some people emailed them ahead of time. And Danielle will hold up a sign. We're trying this on Zoom for the first time to warn you that you will be able to see, but nobody else will be able to see. So we're going to give this a shot. Everybody bear with us. But thank you very much, Assembly Member Weprin.
Good. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, IND, for hosting this forum. It's great to see my colleague, Joanne Simon, your Assembly member, who worked very closely with me on so many criminal justice issues in my role as chair of the Corrections Committee in the Assembly. And of course, before that, I was head of a task force on people with disabilities, and Joanne has been a champion of people with disabilities as well. So good to see you, Joanne, and we'll hopefully continue to work on so many of these issues. It's also, I have very fond memories of your leader, Joan Millman, who served in the assembly with me as well. She actually served with two weapons with my brother as well, and very fond memories of working with Joan. And it's great to see Josh Scaller, your other leader, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum. It's very important that this forum is taking place during these critical times where we face an unprecedented health crisis at the same time that we're fighting, as you all know, the evil of systematic and institutional racism in our society. And that was, of course, demonstrated by all the activities that we all participated in this summer. And of course, what happened to Senator Myrie, was outrageous. And I was very happy to participate and support our entire package in Albany of police reform. I am running for city controller because I've devoted my life to making New York City a better place to live, work, and raise a family. The fiscal crisis we face is real, and it's going to go on for years and years, and it's going to take a while for us to recover. The city deficit keeps growing. It's over $9 billion now, and obviously, as we proceed, we'll know what the real number is. My background, just to give you a little bit of my background, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Of all the candidates running for controller, I think I'm the only one that has the mix of finance experience in the private sector as well as the public sector. I was in the city council starting in 2002, the last term limit class when everybody came in at the same time. And I chaired the finance committee for 8 years. And during that time, we balanced 8 budgets. We're going to have a lot of problems fiscally. I also served, as pointed out, as Deputy Commissioner of Banking. I've been on the Ways and Means Committee in Albany, and I chair the Corrections Committee and have been involved in a lot of criminal justice reform, along with my colleague, Joanne Simon, and hope to continue and really be able to deliver as controller. We all have to work together. Nobody can do this in a vacuum or from top up. It's really got to come from bottom up, as well as involving everybody in the process. And I'm looking forward to participating in the recovery as controller of the city of New York. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we've got questions some people have submitted ahead of time. Reminder that people can drop questions into the comments on Facebook as you're watching this. Alyssa, I know you've been keeping an eye on that. Do we have a couple of questions for Assemblymember Whipron?
We do. We have a general question for all the comptroller candidates from Tyler. Tyler asks, as comptroller, is there a particular agency, program, or other area of government which you are most interested in analyzing or reviewing? An area you think would most benefit from comptroller review?
Well, certainly the Department of Education is certainly one of the largest, if not the largest, agency in the city, and I would particularly like to look at their outside consulting contracts, because there are billions and billions of dollars of consultants to the Department of Education, and if we're looking for any cuts, rather than I don't want to cut teachers. We need more teachers, not less teachers. But there certainly is a lot of waste in the area of outside consultants in the billions. And I think that's somewhere where we can actually, save money at the same time, and not and also at the top. There's so many highly paid bureaucrats that aren't necessarily in the classroom, and I would try to cut the classroom last and not at all if we can, and I think we can avoid it if we look at some of the duplication at the administrative level at the top, as well as the outside consulting budget.
Fantastic. Any others, Alyssa?
Not yet, but you can ask questions all throughout via our Facebook. Unfortunately, Twitter is not letting me tweet tonight, which is really upsetting because we usually have a lot of engagement there. So I guess you can tweet at us, but just drop comments in the Facebook, or you can just reply to the email and I'll make sure your question is raised.
Okay, very good. And I will make an editorial comment. Assembly member, I thought you did very well on keeping the time limit. That was an excellent example set for every candidate here. So thank you very much for that.
Quite welcome.
Ask and you shall receive. We had a couple of questions come in. Thank you to Elizabeth, who asks, are you committed to de Blasio's plan to divest from fossil fuels in 2022?
It's certainly something we should be considering. I am concerned about fossil fuels. Obviously, as controller, you have a say in the pension funds. There are 5 boards. There are different board members. I would certainly play a major role in consultation with those boards. Unlike the state controller, you're not the sole trustee of the pension boards. You have a say in it, but you're not. It's not a sole decision. So it's certainly something that I would seriously discuss with the board, looking into it. And obviously, the number one role of overseeing the pensions are to see that they're sound and well invested. But certainly, I think there's a combination of certain fossil fuel investments or companies that are contributing to that may not be a sound investment anyway, based on that and where our country is going. So it's certainly something that I would seriously consider.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Assembly Member. We really appreciate you being here with us. And we have another candidate for comptroller who's here, so that might be a perfect sort of back-to-back. This is somebody who's familiar to many of us at IND because he overlaps some of the 52nd. Senator Kevin Parker is here. He represents the 21st District. He serves as chair of the Energy and Technology and Telecommunications Committee. Prior to his election to the state Senate, he was a public servant in a variety of different ways, including a special assistant to Carl McCall, which is the first gubernatorial campaign I worked on. And we're very happy to have him here tonight to hear about his plans. Senator, we'll do 4 minutes. If you can, we'll flash you a 1-minute warning and then do a few questions. So thanks so much for joining us. Running for comptroller tonight, Kevin Parker.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. Again, I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, and I'm running for New York City Comptroller. I used to work for the State Comptroller, so I'm still kind of in that mode, but running for City Comptroller. And let me say hello to Joanne and David Weprin and Maya Wiley and all my colleagues, Zelno Myrie, others who I saw on the call. Well, first, let me just say thank you to the members of IND for their past support. You supported me every time I run for the state Senate, and I've benefited from that support, and it's really meant a lot to me. I'm here tonight because I think that IND's support is going to be really critical in my ability to win this election. And so I'm here both to express my interest in running, but also to ask for your support. And, what's happening now with the global pandemic has had a significant impact, as you're going to hear lots of people talk about, on both the finances, but also the conditions of people in our city. And what's going to be most important as we go forward is the issue of leadership. When you look at the city controller's office, there's kind of 3 major functions, right? That being essentially the treasurer for the city of New York, the chief auditor, and the chair of the pension fund. But those are only jobs, those are only aspects, those are only tools of the office. It's not the job. The job is leadership. And the question is, how are we going to deal with some of the major issues that our city is facing going forward? Issues like quality of life and safety, issues like economic opportunity and job creations, issues like affordable housing, issues like police reform. And I think that I'm uniquely qualified, having also worked on Wall Street. I worked at Payne Webber for the chairman of Payne Webber for a number of years, doing both government affairs and municipal finance work, as well as working for Carl McCall when he was a state controller and the largest single investor in the world, running the state pension fund. And for the last 18 years, I've actually sat on the Senate Finance Committee. Over the last decade, I've sat on both the Senate Banking Committee and the Senate Insurance Committee. And so I think I bring those skills and experiences to the job going forward. I think there's going to be a big opportunity for us to do things in the city around using the pension fund to do things like create workforce housing. The issue that we have in the city of New York is that we have teachers married to social workers who have no place to live, transit workers married to police officers who have no place to live, and we really need to deal with the issue of workforce housing. We also need to really examine the pipeline that goes between homeless people living on the street and getting them into supportive housing. You just don't build supportive housing and they will show up. We really have to look at that pipeline, and I think both the audit function and the pension fund could be used in very specific ways to do that work. To answer one of the questions that were asked, one of the things that I'm going to do on day one is I'm going to audit the police department. I think the issue I've led in the state legislature, on the issue of police reform. I don't believe in defunding the police. I do think that we need to reimagine the police department. When we passed the 10 bills on police reform in the state legislature, 4 of them were mine. In fact, one of your members was actually really instrumental in actually drafting one of the important pieces of legislation that creates a office in the Attorney General's office around police misconduct. And so I wanted to thank him very much for his work and the work he does for the Senate. But that is the kind of work that I expect to continue to do in the state Senate office. I think that you're going to see a dynamic in which I continue to have a strong legislative presence and continue to work on legislation with my colleagues in the state Assembly and state Senate. I want to thank David Weprin for all the important work he has done in the state Assembly. I'm committed to keeping him there so that he can continue that important work that he started. We've been partners on some legislation together, and I think that he's absolutely great.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Very good. That's why we do this. I think you're at about 4 minutes, Senator. Alyssa, do we have any questions that have come in, or do we want to maybe ask the same one that the Assembly member got as well?
Yeah, we can do that. Well, in that case, we can start with the same question about the mayor's plan with divesting from fossil fuels. And then there are a couple of others in the queue as well.
Absolutely. I've been actually one of the leaders on the issues of environmental justice and dealing with issues. I co-chaired the Senate task force on the CLCPA, right? The most aggressive climate change legislation passed in the entire United States. One of the bills passed that was in conjunction with that was the Environmental Justice Board, which was my bill that I authored. And now I'm also authoring the bill on carbon pricing, and that's going to help pay for a lot of this. And so I think what the mayor has talked about is something that we have already been talking about in the state legislature. Liz Krueger actually has a bill that does that on the state level. I'm a co-sponsor of that bill, and certainly one of the things that we'll do with the pension fund, if you help make me the city controller, is to make sure that the pension fund is commensurate with our commitment to environmental justice and protecting and creating a clean energy economy.
Great, thank you. Another policy-specific question from Sari. CUNY is a key engine from growth and mobility for the city, but massive budget cuts for CUNY were just announced today. What can you do to shore it up? Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the issues that so CUNY is a big issue for me. The largest institution in my district is Brooklyn College. I've been a CUNY student myself at the CUNY Graduate Center in the PhD program in political science. And, obviously and we have to understand CUNY as not just an institution around education, but an economic development driver. As we start talking about how do we create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits, we need greater and greater people with skills, particularly as we produce people not just for the clean energy economy, but also for the fire industry, which dominates New York economics, right? Finance, insurance, and real estate. And so 2 years of college is going to be even more important. It's going to be, essentially is what a high school diploma was 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that we have to look at all the revenue potentials that we need to have. Look, a lot of this is unsure until we have the election. Hopefully it'll be a Democrat who wins, and we'll wind up getting the kind of stimulus from the federal government that will allow us not to have to make some of these draconian cuts. But CUNY is certainly not one of the places to start. And certainly I think that there are lots of ways to find revenue, across the city and across the state in order to help shore that up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Senator. We really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on.
We do have one more candidate for comptroller who I think is going to be joining us later, but we'll turn now to some of the candidates for mayor who've joined us tonight. And somebody who's been very patient, who's here early. We really appreciate being joined by Sean Donovan. Sean was the commissioner of New York City Department of Housing and Preservation Development under Mayor Bloomberg. After that, he was secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, in the Obama administration, and then also director of the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, also in the Obama administration. Sean's a native of New Yorker. He's running for mayor. Thank you so much for joining us, Sean Donovan.
Jason, thanks so much. It's great to see you, Kevin, David. It was great to see Joanne, who's my assembly member and neighbor in Boerum Hill. And as you said, Jason, I am a lifelong New Yorker, and I'm a public servant because I grew up in this city at a different time of crisis. In the 1970s, on my way to school, I walked past people sleeping on our streets. I saw neighborhoods burning in the Bronx and so many other places around this city. And it lit a fire in me to go to work saving this city. I started volunteering in a homeless shelter. I went to work at the National Coalition for the Homeless. And then I went to work for a nonprofit in the Bronx, rebuilding those very same neighborhoods I'd seen burning. And that began a 30-year career at the front lines of housing and social justice and economic justice. And I thought it began a life in New York, raising my family and building a life here. In fact, I moved to Bergen Street with my wife. We raised our 2 boys there. And we were so happy that I actually recruited my sister-in-law from the Upper West Side to move to Bergen Street. I got my mother-in-law to move from New Jersey. And we built a life with our kids in school, with my wife helping to design Brooklyn Bridge Park, that I thought was the perfect life. There was only one problem. Barack Obama asked me to come serve in his cabinet. And so I went to work. I helped Barack Obama turn on the lights at the beginning of that administration. And I was there literally on the last night before Donald Trump's inauguration, helping turn off the lights. And that service taught me what it means to lead in moments of crisis like this. As Jason said, I was housing commissioner in New York City, helping rebuild after 9/11. But President Obama asked me to come be housing secretary in the midst of the worst housing crisis of our lifetimes. He asked me to lead this city back after Sandy hit our shores. And we built back
How you doing?
better and stronger and safer. 3 weeks into my time as budget director, Ebola hit. And we worked to make sure that a global threat didn't become a pandemic that would cost hundreds of thousands of American lives. And he asked me to lead as budget director, investing in a broad range of progressive priorities like the Affordable Care Act, while still bringing down our budget faster than at any time since World War II. Through all that crisis, I've learned that those who are most vulnerable before a crisis hits will always be hurt the worst by that crisis. And so we have to measure our recovery from this crisis in New York by the progress of our most vulnerable. And that's what I've done my entire career. In fact, I believe I'm the true progressive in this race because of the progress that I've made for those who are too often left behind. On homelessness, I led the strategy for President Obama that dramatically reduced homelessness across the country. And in 100 cities, we ended veteran and chronic homelessness. I led the strategy for President Obama on how to make our cities and neighborhoods more racially just by demanding that every city in the country that would take federal funds had to make sure that they were used to dismantle segregation and structural racism. In fact, President Trump is attacking Joe Biden, saying he wants to destroy the suburbs by letting Black and brown people live there. I'm the one who did that work. I'm the one that President Trump is attacking for trying to make our neighborhoods and our communities more racially just. I was also the first cabinet secretary ever to endorse marriage equality. And we made landmark progress giving transgender rights through the equal access rule that I put in place at HUD. In all of these areas, I believe that we can take that progress and repair and rebuild this city. But I also believe, as President Obama used to say all the time, that we can never let a crisis go to waste. And so as we repair and rebuild this city, we must reimagine New York as a city that works for everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so
With
much.
tonight.
Alyssa, how are we doing on questions? Do we have any questions for Sean Donovan?
Oh boy, do we. Questions are coming in, so keep them coming. I'm going to try to get to everyone's, but if I don't get it, we'll hopefully get it on the next candidate. So the first one is from Shafali, and she asks, what is your plan for safer and more bike lanes in the city? As biking culture in NYC increases, we do not see the infrastructure to accommodate this. There are far too many cars, and accidents involving a driver and a pedestrian or cyclist.
Yeah, well, you'll see right here the broken hand I got on my bicycle. I'm a regular cyclist. Love to bike across the Brooklyn Bridge all the way up to the Palisades, all along the waterfront in Brooklyn, Prospect Park. I'm a regular too. So I know what it means to not feel safe on the streets of New York as a kid who learned to ride my bike. And look, what this is really about is building the streets of the 21st century. We're trying to operate a 21st century city on 20th century streets. And whether that's bikes, whether that's a whole other range of ways that we design our streets, whether it's for people with disabilities, for picking up trash, for so many different things, we ought to be looking at accelerating the bus movement around the city through dedicated lanes and smart streets. So on bikes specifically, what we have to do is create more separated lanes. I think there's the potential to rethink the use of old transportation corridors as dedicated bikeways. And we need to be thinking about really creating separated bike lanes. One of the things that I bring as a candidate that nobody else does is I've worked with mayors across the city, across the country, across the globe, and I've seen solutions, whether it's bus rapid transit in Curitiba, Brazil, which is the most progressive system in the world, or the incredible solutions for bikes that have been put in place in Europe and so many other places across the globe. Those are the kind of 21st century solutions, real innovation that we can bring to this city.
Fantastic. Alyssa, is there one more before we move on to other candidates?
Yeah, we have a plethora of questions. What's the best one? Okay, on the note that you ended on, the next mayor will take office at a difficult moment in New York City history. What opportunities do you see for reimagining life in New York based on any changes you've seen over the past 10 months? And that's from Tyler.
A small question. So look, who thought that we would be eating most of our meals outside on our streets a few months ago? Who thought that the digital divide would be brought to the fore in so many profound ways. Who thought that we would be completely rethinking how to keep our subways clean, how to keep homeless folks housed? We have an enormous opportunity at this point. As I said, as President Obama used to tell us all the time, never let a crisis go to waste. So what I want to see as mayor is not that these are temporary changes, but that we actually take this moment to permanently end the digital divide. Why shouldn't we have free Wi-Fi available across this city, particularly in the communities that we know are the most vulnerable, that would allow kids to learn, that would allow seniors to get their medicine or order food? Why can't we reimagine a city that would actually allow not just restaurants, but retailers to survive and thrive by thinking about how we reuse our street space in ways that is done all over the world? These are the kinds of examples and so many more that are the opportunities to reimagine this city. And I would just end where I began, which is I began my career in public service in homelessness. We know how to end homelessness. We have to reimagine the right to shelter as a right to housing. And at a moment where we've actually housed so many homeless folks in hotels or other places, rather than fighting to throw them out, why aren't we asking about ways that we could actually turn those temporary shelters into permanent supportive housing? As I said, I know we can end homelessness because we did it in over 100 cities around this country when I led the strategy for President Obama. We can reimagine this city for good.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here, sir. We'll just remind people, because I've seen the numbers ticking up. Some people maybe didn't hear earlier. If you've got questions for candidates, drop them into the comments space here. That's also, let us know that you're here. We do take attendance, and there is attendance requirement to be able to vote in our endorsement meeting in January. So like the thread, share it if you want, that'd be great. Leave us a little note and let us know you're here. We enjoy seeing all of you, and it's good for taking attendance purposes. So our borough president here in Brooklyn has a hard out because I know you've got another event, and I can see you're literally in the car on the way there. So I appreciate you making time for us, and we'll squeeze you in before you've got to leave. I'll give the introduction, I guess, but Eric Adams, who was a state senator prior to being our borough president, he was a police officer before that, friend of the club. Now he's running for mayor. Eric Adams, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Josh. Good to see you. I see Josh Scala, and good luck to Joanne on her race as well. Particularly with IND, when I started my political career, you were my first endorsement in a club. You never forget your first, and I thank you so much for it. And let me say this also. I feel like this gentleman that sat down before he was given a portrait, and he looked at the person who was drawing his face because he had a scar on his face, and he told him, listen, I know you see the scar, but remember I have a face. And to some people in the club, my relationship with Jesse Hamilton, you see it as a scar, but remember I have a face. Remember I'm the face that spent 22 years protecting the city and fighting against police brutality. I have a face that stood next to Abner Louima, to Doris Mon. I have a face that testified against stop and frisk report in federal court, and the federal judge mentioned it. I fought against those who were cuffing pregnant women inside the correctional facilities as I visited them. All the different movements and conversations. I consider myself the original reformer and disruptor. I didn't wake up just today and said I wanted to change how government is operating. I have that face. And I know this city very well. I lived in the city my entire life, and it wasn't easy growing up in Brooklyn and South Jamaica, Queens. I can tell you the days my siblings and me went to school carrying a garbage bag full of clothing because my mother was afraid they were going to throw us out of our homes, and she didn't want us to be embarrassed by not having a change of clothes. Yes, people talk about helping homelessness. I was on the verge of it. And so I spent my entire professional life police officer, activist, state senator, borough president, helping those who are living the life that I live. And let me tell you something. I hear the word that people are saying that this city is dead. That's deja vu for me. When I started policing during the early 80s, they were saying the same thing: 2,000 homicides a year, 98,000 robberies, and almost 98,000 felonious assaults. Even in your community, you had every car having a no radio sign. But I was part of the small team of officers that used technology to finally get a grip on crime. And we were able to implement the first of its kind using data to turn around public safety, and our city became safe. Public safety is the prerequisite for prosperity, and I'm going to say that over and over again. If every agency in this city would have followed what we did by turning around the dysfunctionality of public safety, we would be living in a different city right now. What does that mean? Our city is dysfunctional, and we need to deal with that, and we need to have a reality of that. We create crises. Here's how we govern in New York and across this country. We govern in the spirit of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place. Just look at Rikers Island. 80% of the men and women at Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma, equivalency diploma upon arrival. Almost 40%, according to one Texas study, is dyslexic. 55% have a learning disability. If we would have prevented the crime of not educating them, we won't be dealing with pulling them out of the river downstream by dealing with the crimes that they're committed. We can run better as a city. Those on Facebook and those who are here, as I sum up, you've done your job of paying your taxes. Now it's time for government to do its job by using your tax dollars to run this city correctly. We're better than what we're doing. All of our problems, for the most part, are self-inflicted because of the incompetency of running this city, and it's time to run this city in real time and an effective way. I did it as a cop, and I could do it again as the mayor of the city of New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you being here. Alyssa, do we have some questions for the borough president?
Yeah, we do. And I'll pick up on a theme where you just left off about procurement reform, since you talked about tax dollars. Benjamin is wondering, or he says, we need procurement reform. Do you have any ideas about how to do that?
Yes, we do. Right now, it's a big mistake when you think about what happened under COVID-19. It is a huge mistake that we have too much of our procurement dollars, close to $19 billion, we're buying outside our city. It's time to come home. We can make our own face masks. We can make our own PPEs. Much of our consultants' dollars go outside the city. Instead of looking at lowest cost, we should look at best value. That is what we need to do. I want to partner with my friends in the state as a former state senator and state, let's reform procurement so that it's best value. Our tax dollars should recirculate here in this city and put our people back to work. Let's build New York. We can do it. We have the smartest minds, the best people, the most dedicated. Let's bring those dollars back here to our city.
Great. Thank you. And the second question, since you happen to be in a car, I will ask you about your plan for safer and more bike lanes in the city. As biking culture in New York City increases, we do not see the infrastructure to accommodate this. Shafali, believes that there are far too many cars and accidents involving a driver and a pedestrian or cyclist.
Listen, folks, Facebook and here and present, I'm not the choir. I wrote the song. Look at the record as the borough president. Look what I have done. Go over to Prospect Park and see the bike lane that I put money in, protected bike lane. Go look at the countless number of families. Not only did I light candles and put flowers when they lost their family members, but gave money to them to pay for funerals, went to visit those who were injured because of bike lanes. I've stood next to families for Safe Street, transportation alternatives. I'm the person like the Hair Club for Men guy. I don't talk about transportation. I have a Metro card where I'm on the train. You see me on my bike moving throughout these streets over and over again. I believe in safe protected bike lanes. And when you look at my record, it's a stellar record. I am not a reinvented progressive. I'm in the original progressive from the start, and no one is going to take that title from what I have done for over 42 years of pushing for safe streets, safe families, being proactive, and not just responsive. We're better than what we're doing, New York. Don't let anyone feel that we can't do what you're doing every day as responsible taxpayers. Now we need responsible leaders. I went through a lot, New York. Now we need leaders who have gone through something so they can know what people are going through now.
Fantastic. Alyssa, is there maybe one more before we move on from Eric Adams?
Sure. I think a lot of people liked the second question we asked last time. The next mayor will take office at a difficult moment in New York City history. What opportunities do you see for reimagining life in New York based on any changes you've seen over the past 10 months?
That's the goal. First thing we need to do, and that we need to be really clear of, and I want to say this over and over again, and I'm going to say it continuously throughout the campaign because I know a lot of people don't get it. We're dysfunctional. We create our crises. How do you have an educational system in conflict with the Department of Health? We spend millions of dollars to fight childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma, yet we serve our babies 960,000 meals a day. That causes what? Childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma. I got the city of New York to stop serving processed meat in our school system, a type 1 carcinogen. I know what I'm doing at Bellevue Hospital, the first of its kind in America, where we are reversing chronic diseases. My program is going to be duplicated. I'm going to move our city to have a more agrarian urban farming appeal. What does that look like? Why can't we grow food in our schools on the rooftops and allow the children to serve it in the cafeterias and learn about the multi-billion-dollar industry called urban farming? Why can't we become the biotech center here and have our technology? I'm going to move away from the enemies that we've made between education and business. My tech industry is going to be part of creating the curriculum so our children not only could learn the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, but they're going to know how to fill the jobs in this city. This rote learning, this agrarian calendar that we are living through right now is wrong. We should be using the summer month to give our children continuing instruction. There's no reason children are off during the summer anymore. That was agrarian calendar. Nobody's picking corn on the farm. We need continuing education for our babies so they can compete on a global level. And so I'm going to reinvent education. Every mother will have a doula to learn about the first 1,000 days of life when the brain grows 80%, and they will cycle into pre-K and 3K being prepared. So it's about reinventing our city, being efficient as a city, and understanding that we're better than what we show in New York. New York, we are made up of the best stuff on earth, and that's New Yorkers.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Our next candidate who's also running for mayor, a woman named Diane Morales. Diane most recently served as the executive director and CEO of the Phipps Neighborhood. It's a nonprofit that works to fight poverty in the South Bronx. She also helped establish the Puerto Rican Women's Foundation shortly after Hurricane Sandy, and that's to protect and enhance women's interests and representation in Puerto Rico. We're very happy to have her tonight. Diana Morales.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. I appreciate having the opportunity. Just one correction, it was Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, where we created that foundation.
That's bad staff work. I apologize.
No worries at all. So let me just start off by saying that, I'm not a traditional politician. I want to acknowledge that from the jump. My campaign is a 100% grassroots, people-powered campaign. I have no connections to the establishment, either through, political machines or my staff or anything like that. I am Brooklyn born and raised, New Yorker. I'm a single mom. I'm an educator by training. I have spent my career in the community. I have created pathways for young people to gain access to careers. I have increased access to higher education to people. I have managed large teams and helped to transform organizations. And I have worked magic with budgets in nonprofit organizations that get reimbursed at about 70 cents on the dollar, both closing those gaps and generating new revenue. I'm also, on a personal level, I'm an Afro-Latina. I am a first-generation college graduate and the single mother of 2 young adults who are college students themselves. I have fought with my children. Both of them had learning differences. I fought with them in the education system to get them the services that they needed. I have fought with both of them in order to help them access the mental health services that they have needed. My daughter is a survivor. I have struggled and fought against the NYPD as they racially profiled my son, including pepper spraying him and assaulting him right in front of my eyes at one of the George Floyd protests early this summer. A year ago, I jumped into this race because I thought there was tremendous value in my personal and professional experience being brought to bear to leverage change for the largest number of New Yorkers possible. I had no idea at that point in time that we would be living through this pandemic and that the need for us to actually leverage people who understand the challenges that some of our most marginalized people experience, and someone who also understands how to run a business, an organization. I had no idea how much that would actually be necessary at this point in time. We are living at the crossroads of multiple pandemics, multiple crises that have made it abundantly clear that things were not working before, that there are deeply rooted inequities and injustices that have led to this moment in time. It is urgent, I believe. There's a moral imperative for us to move forward with a fundamentally transformational leadership and governance of this city. We must be committed to leaving the old ways behind and stop tinkering around the edges and actually fundamentally transform how we run this city. And to me, that means centering and elevating the voices of those that have been forgotten and left behind for so long, those who we called essential workers during this awful pandemic, who made it possible for the rest of us to work comfortably from home while they put their lives on the line. Those folks are primarily people of color. They're primarily women, and we owe it to them to center them as we move forward and think about how we're going to bring this city back. And that is what I am committed to. And I am excited and honored to be here tonight. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Alyssa, I'm sure we've got some good questions.
We do, but just a PSA, feel free to keep putting the questions in the queue. I feel a bit repetitive for cycling through them, so apologies for the repeats. But we'll start with a new question, which came in from Elizabeth. Low-income housing is disproportionately built in poor and minority neighborhoods. Do you support building more affordable housing in neighborhoods like Soho and the Upper West Side and Brooklyn Heights?
I absolutely support that. I also think we need to think about how we define what is affordable. I think we need to think about how we actually make more owners of our tenants. I would love to see us explore and expand community land trusts, social housing, cooperative housing. We need to move away from this sort of big landlord model that provides a lot of profit and revenue to a small number of people and leaves so many tenants in the current situation of crisis that we are currently in.
Great. And going to repeat the question about bike lanes and more safe infrastructure.
Absolutely. I think, so the last 7 months have actually been a really, really interesting experiment for us in terms of what the roads could look like with fewer cars. I would look to actually creating a system whereby we have fewer cars on the road, much more bike lanes, much more pedestrian friendly streets, and do that all over the city. I also think from a public transportation perspective, which I'm just going to sort of jump in here on, we also need to think about creating bus lanes to connect the outer boroughs to each other so that people do not have to travel through Manhattan in order to get from point A to point B, and so that it doesn't take the home health worker that lives in Flatbush an hour and a half to get to her job in the Bronx.
Alyssa, is there maybe one more question?
Sure. I'm borrowing this question from Vicky. What would you need to accomplish for you to consider your term as mayor a success?
I love that question. What I would think about wanting to have as my legacy would be a city where workers were centered and making enough wages that they could live in dignity and live decently and provide for their families. A city where women were getting paid wages the equivalent of their male counterparts and able to provide for their families. And a city where education had been fundamentally transformed, where we had narrowed the inequities around both technology infrastructure and actually also fundamentally transformed what we're teaching, because what we're teaching right now looks exactly like what we were teaching 40 years ago, and society has moved significantly forward. So I would want to look at organizing our curriculum around 3 core tenets. Think about financial literacy, digital and technology literacy, and civic literacy. Those are the things that are going to actually prepare our students to be ready for today and the future, and that's where we need to be going.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Also, I think I would give you the award for the best art in the background so far. We'll see if anybody else challenges. Well, fantastic. Our next candidate is also running for mayor. I want to speak a little bit about Maya Wiley before introducing her. She's an attorney, a civil rights activist. She was counsel to Mayor de Blasio and was the chair of the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board. She's also worked for NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU. And I actually just coincidentally heard a podcast with her on something called The Oath, one of my favorite podcasts. It was not about running for mayor, but it was very interesting. So shout out to The Oath. But she's running for mayor, and she's here to talk to us a little bit tonight. Just a reminder for anybody, questions, you can drop them into the Facebook comments, and we'll read them at the end. So thank you so much, Maya Wiley.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you everyone who's here. So many friends I see, and also people who I don't know. And that's part of the exciting part of this process. Let me start by saying, look, fundamentally, I am running for mayor because I both believe and know that we can be a city where we all can live with dignity. And I think you've heard so much already about what dignity is. And it is everything from being able to afford a decent home, knowing that we can get to a job safely and actually get there by safe means like public transportation, and know that we're going to be paid a fair wage, get benefits, and that our city is resilient in the face of crises and crises like climate change. So many things that have already been talked about. But let me tell you why I, as an unconventional candidate, came to the decision to do this. And it really starts from the fact that I am a person who knows what it is like to live in a neighborhood, in my case in Washington, D.C., after my family moved to D.C. from the Lower East Side in a Mitchell Lama apartment, which was how my activist parents were able to afford living in New York. But that coming to DC and living in a Black neighborhood, going to the Black neighborhood public school, I saw firsthand and in a personal and emotional way what it felt like to have your best friend disappear, literally disappear, not be around the corner anymore, not be in the classroom with you anymore, and have her mother that was the cashier at the neighborhood grocery store not be there anymore. And all I knew was that my best friend Charlene, and then other people who started disappearing in my neighborhood, I knew and understood not a whole lot. I just knew that Charlene's mother worked long hours, and that when the rent went up, she couldn't afford to stay. And that wherever they went, and I don't know where they went, they just disappeared. I knew it was not better. It's that childhood experience of being in a public school at the top of your class and still being 2 grade levels behind in your segregated, overcrowded, underfunded public school. So when I came back to New York, a city I always knew I was going to come back to, I came back because part of what I loved about New York, in addition to the fact that it was an exciting place with really big buildings that we didn't have in DC, was that everybody was here. And it didn't feel like a place where Charlene's would just be disappearing, like a place that could become something less than the vast diversity that we had of language, of culture, of experience, of race, of identity. And that those were the things that made it so exciting, as well as being the center of art, the center of all of that. But I became a civil rights lawyer. I wanted to work at the intersection of race and poverty. And every decision I made in my career was to do just that. From the ACLU, fighting for education, from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, fighting for access to healthcare. So all of that taking me to City Hall, because I knew it is local government that has the ability to transform a city so that there are no more Charlene's. And when COVID hit, I agree with a lot of what Sean said. I will disagree about one thing. We absolutely knew what was going to happen when COVID hit. We absolutely knew who was going to get hardest hit. It's who gets hardest hit in every crisis, from 9/11 to Hurricane Sandy. And our opportunity now, and what I am so passionate about, is the possibility for a leadership that not only recovers us, but reimagines a city where we have addressed the dual pandemics of both coronavirus and systemic racism. And that's why I'm here tonight. So thank you. I will stop so we can have questions.
You were perfect on time. That was amazing. That's a TV background, I guess. Thank you very
I got
much.
more time than TV, so I thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Alyssa, do we have some questions for Maya Wiley?
Yeah, a good question came in that touches on where you ended. Sorry, my dog is snoring. I don't know if you hear that, but that might be Kenan also. So this is from Julia. She writes, recent reports have found that NYC public schools are the most segregated in the country. How would you go about addressing this and working to ensure our city's children are afforded equal access to a great education?
Oh, thank you for that important question. Look, we learn best when we learn together. And we have so much richness in this city to draw from for that learning. And one of the things that we've seen in COVID, so first of all, we absolutely have to remove all of our discriminatory practices where the research has shown us that we're not just segregating our schools, we're disserving the educational opportunity of all our children. And I do mean all our children, because all our children benefit from learning together. But one of the things that COVID has done by blowing the lid off the boxes and collapsing the walls is getting us out of the box of kind of the traditional fights that we have around education, because we have an opportunity as a city to rethink what education looks like. There are high schools that don't need to have walls and where assignments don't need to be in buildings anymore. And I'm not just talking about online learning, but ways that we can actually innovate what education is and how it's delivered. And we also have vacancy rates that give us the opportunity to solve another problem as we're creating more interest in new educational opportunities to learn together, which is reducing our class sizes and creating innovative curriculum that draws in our children, because we have vacancy and we have a capital construction budget. We have assets and resources. We can contribute to some of this innovation. And really importantly, and I know Brad is here, and his leadership in really looking at how we innovate at local level by calling together our community to say, we know one size doesn't fit all. Let's figure out what works in our community, and having the city government incentivize that kind of engagement. Critically important, and one we have to expand throughout the city.
Great, thank you. Another question from Dan this time. He asks, should ULURP be reformed?
Yep. And let me just say a couple things. We have to really do community planning. We really have to both engage residents in a vision for the community, but also in a way that ensures that we are growing opportunity in how we do zoning and how we think about what development is, that we have to put a vision of the city we want to be and of whole communities into that process. And we can do that with reform, and we can do that with principles like ensuring that everyone can stay and that we're doing development without displacement, that jobs actually benefit the community, that we know that there's some accountability to whether or not we're actually improving things for communities, and sustainability. You know, making sure that we are actually contributing to a resilient future that reduces our damaging impacts on the globe, but also that makes our communities healthier. So I believe all those are things that can be served by reform.
Fantastic. Is there maybe one more question, Alyssa?
Sure. I think folks liked this one from Vicki. Again, what would you need to accomplish for you to consider your term as mayor a success?
You know, I agreed with so much of what we've heard, quite frankly, but let me sum it up with one thing we haven't. 600,000 people. That's how many people we have in the city that do not have health insurance. And we know that's far too many of our neighbors, our sisters and brothers who are undocumented. We also know that it's some folks who have papers, who are citizens, and they're in a cash economy. And that is not tolerable. That is not tolerable in this city. And we have the opportunity, in addition to all the other things we've already heard that I agree with, on affordability, on ensuring that our workers have dignity, on ensuring we all can stay. But that includes that we start innovating how we make sure we have what I'll call a Medicare for all right here in New York City.
Fantastic. Maya Wiley, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We've got one more candidate, but before we'll do that, I'll just reiterate, if you're here and you have been paying attention, we want to make sure we know about that so that your attendance is counted. You're able to vote in our endorsement meeting in January. Drop a question or mention. I've seen Toba and a number of other folks mentioning I'm here in the comments. That's great. Like the post, share the post. I know we've got a lot of folks who will watch this in the coming days. So if you're watching this at some point in the future, make sure you do that so you can be counted as well. And I'll just mention, we really appreciate everybody's, I've seen during this call, people signing up for the discussion page, people becoming members of our page. So if you're watching it, consider liking us and you'll see these events in the future. Such an exciting time for politics coming up. We've got the Max Rose phone bank and canvas coming up on Saturday. We've got calls for Andrew Gennardis on Monday night. Maybe Tyler or somebody can drop those links back in the comments. So for anybody who's new and showed up, we're really trying to hold on to those seats. We worked so hard to get them in 2018, and we want to make sure we hold on to them and make sure it's a really, really successful night on November 3rd. And early voting comes up on October 24th. So you can check voting.nyc for information on that. We're going back to the comptroller race now with a third candidate for comptroller. Also no stranger to the club. He represents in his council district, the 39th district, a good portion of our district, but Councilmember Brad Lander, who is currently with the city council. He was at the Pratt Institute before that, and an urban fit planner, and did a lot of great work on the Progressive Caucus and getting a lot of progressive members into the city council. He's now running for city comptroller. Thank you so much for being with us, Brad Lander. Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Sorry.
That's the first one. You can't have a Zoom call without that happening.
All right, I'm glad to give it to you. Thank you so much, Jason and Danielle and Alyssa. I'm really honored to be here. This is actually my first club interview of the comptroller's race, so I confess I'm a little nervous, but it is great to be here with so many friendly faces in a club with this great work and history of IND, from the legendary Eileen Dugan, whose legacy is so well held up by Joanne. It's great to see Josh. You know, the partnership that we formed after the 2009 race is really a testament to you and how much you love this community. I'm excited about Jessie Pierce and the work this club did for her. And I want to say a quick word about Buddy Scotto, who was the towering presence in this club when I first came to it. Like a lot of people, I did not always agree with Buddy, nor he with me, but I love listening to his stories and really learned from and admired his commitment to this community. So I'm thinking about him tonight. You know, over the past 10 years, we've had a chance to do some amazing work together. The work we did after Hurricane Sandy, bringing participatory budgeting to New York City, the new park, the Brooklyn Greenway section along Columbia Street, St. Mary's Playground, legislation that brought fair scheduling to fast food workers, living wages to Uber and Lyft drivers, protections for freelancers against wage theft, which I know a lot of people in this club have availed themselves of. Probably the thing I'm proudest of, Alyssa and Maya referred to, and that's the work we've done in this community to win school integration in the middle schools of District 15. That took a real reckoning. It was not easy, but we leaned into it. We had hard conversations, and now we're in its second year. And I would say, just like talk to people who are in your middle schools, it is working in ways that show it can work on a much, much broader scale. In all that work, I have tried to make government work better by listening to the voices of community and taking a hard look at the data, fighting for more livable and sustainable neighborhoods for everyone, and really reckoning with those issues of race and gender and economic inequality so we can make this a genuinely inclusive multiracial democracy, the city that we want. And that's the perspective I want to bring to the New York City Comptroller's Office. You've heard it over and over again tonight. Even before coronavirus, we were already in a time of peril for our democracy, with gaping inequalities from housing to healthcare to policing. And we're fractured so far from the ideals of equal justice or opportunity. We've got short-sighted politics that have made it hard for us to respond to crises, from COVID to climate. And people don't feel like government tells them the truth. So when we're faced with the greatest challenge of our generation, we're flat-footed, and we've got to do better to manage that crisis, to save the lives of our neighbors, especially seniors, hard-hit communities of color, frontline workers, and millions of families struggling to survive the economic catastrophe. Amidst a real budget crisis that calls for making hard choices, we still have to find ways to invest in long-term rebuilding with much greater attention to those neglected issues of equity, sustainability, and resilience. And I'm running for controller to help our city rise to that challenge. The fundamental responsibilities of the Comptroller's Office are to ensure that we're spending public funds, investing public pensions, and making sure our agencies are working in ways that align with our values and secure that more just, prosperous, and equitable future. We think of the Comptroller's Office as the city's chief financial officer, and it is, but it's also our chief accountability officer, tasked with ensuring that we're budgeting wisely and investing strategically, but also living up to our commitments to each other and future generations. So all those tools in the office, the audits, the budget analysis, the pension fund management, the contracting, can be brought to confront our city's biggest challenges: affordable housing, economic recovery, making our city more accessible, our streets safer and more livable, infrastructure that supports comprehensive and community planning, and especially, since the Comptroller is the office charged with taking that long-term view on the city, climate crisis. We did not see the COVID crisis coming, but climate we surely can. So I'll make the Comptroller's Office a hub for focusing the attention of New Yorkers on the climate crisis, divesting from fossils, building resilient infrastructure, transitioning to clean energy and good jobs for New Yorkers. I know we can make government work better and more consistently with our values. And that's what I want to do in the Comptroller's Office. I would so love to have the support of IND to help me get there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, council member. And Alyssa, do we have some questions for Brad Lander?
Of course. Our first one comes from IND Executive Board Chair Steve Bronstein. He asks, what is your plan to support local businesses which have been devastated by COVID-19?
Thank you. That is a great question, because I'm working right now with our state senator, Brian Kavanaugh, and Assemblywoman Yulene New on a program we're calling Small Business Recovery Leases. We know we've all seen these small businesses that we love, that are part of the reason we live in this neighborhood. People have put their just sweat and blood and life savings. And now, because they had to close down and their businesses are either still not open or only at 25%, the biggest thing I've heard from them is the back rent is piling up and piling up and piling up. And even if I'm not being evicted today, the rent is too high. It was already too high before. And now with that back rent, there's no way I could keep going. And I already didn't have stability on a good long-term lease. So what small business recovery leases would do, and we need Albany to authorize it, but it would be a city program, is that the city would give a 10-year tax break to building owners who work out a restructured lease with their independently owned small business tenants that settle the back rent. Some of it will be forgiven, some of it rolled into this new 10-year lease. You get a new affordable long-term lease that settles the back rent. It's basically a kind of a third sharing of the burden. The landlord takes about a third of the burden. The tenants have to, lean in and keep going, but the city comes in, and we don't have to pay it all now. We don't have it now, But if we spread it out over 10 years in the form of this property tax relief only for independently owned small businesses, we can help thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of them survive the crisis.
Great, thank you. And you touched on this in your opening remarks, but Tyler asks, as comptroller, is there a particular agency, program, or other area of government which you are most interested in analyzing or reviewing? An area you think would most benefit from comptroller review?
Yeah. One thing I really want to drill down on is the city's capital projects management, capital budget, and infrastructure investment. You know, we've got a $90 billion operating budget that we don't pay enough attention to, but we pay a lot of attention. Then we've got a $25 billion capital budget that gets very little attention. We don't pay attention to it in our 10-year capital plan, even though it should be the infrastructure plan that goes along with our city's thinking about growth and land use. All those projects, you know, they come in way over budget, way longer time than they're scheduled. And so I passed a law earlier this year that will require the city to create a universal capital projects tracking system. And I want to have a team of people that look at the capital projects management, the capital budget, and our infrastructure, because I really think there's an enormous amount of money we can save there in a way that also helps prepare our city for a more resilient and sustainable future.
Fantastic. Alyssa, maybe one more question?
Sure. Well, first, Elizabeth Adams says that she loves the Planned Parenthood poster in the background. And your final question will be, you asked a few candidates so far. What would you need to accomplish for you to consider your term as comptroller a success?
I do want to say, having just put my fist up, you know, watching the Senate hearings this week has just been like crushing and devastating. You know, we think of the courts as a place that are supposed to protect and extend rights. So seeing it used as a place of like minoritarian, authoritarian rule to take rights away is like really hard. And I just want to say to everybody like worrying today, to women worrying about reproductive rights and LGBTQ folks worrying about equality and everybody worried about their healthcare, like this is hard. I love that what IND is doing is leaning into like keep phone banking, take back that Senate, take back that White House. It is the only answer to this hideous authoritarian bullying, but that doesn't mean it's easy. So yeah, so you know, as I mentioned, there's a lot, you know, obviously we need to make smarter use of the budget. We're going to have really hard times in the years ahead. So we have to find smart ways to address operating budget shortfalls without eating our seed corn. We still have to make long-term investments in the future. And I guess, as I said, if I have to pick one thing that I would really want people to say that's what the office did during his time, it is getting our city ready for the climate crisis, making the office a hub of focusing our attention there. It is an office that can do a lot there, divesting fossil fuels, promoting alternative investments in clean energy, pushing the companies that we invest that $220 billion in to think about their climate future, which is smart economics as well as good for the planet, auditing all the work we're supposed to be doing to get our city more resilient in the face of rising seas and warming temperatures. You know, the 8 years that the next comptroller, if reelected, will serve in office is the time to do everything we can to mitigate and get our city prepared for what's coming. This is the office that's supposed to take the long-term view on the city. And it seems pretty clear to me, if you say, what are the biggest risks right now? That's the biggest long-term one, and it's the place I would put the most attention.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brad. Brad Lander, running for comptroller. We appreciate you being with us here tonight. I'm just going to express appreciation for IND members. You know, there's a huge national election going on. The Democrat is on a live town hall on one channel. The Republican is on a live town hall on the other channel. And we've got a lot of folks watching us and tuning in, asking questions. So I'm very appreciative of the members of this club and all of our interested friends. So thanks very much to the candidates. Just a reminder, there are other people potentially running for those two offices who we reached out to and invited. There may be some spillover to future meetings. We'll also be hearing from the council candidates, the 33rd and the 39th, as well as borough president candidates. So there's a lot more to come. It's going to be a very action-packed election cycle will go right from the national right into 2021. So great time for political junkies. I'll go to Joanne Simon now, who spoke just briefly at the beginning, but I wanted to give you an actual moment to talk a little bit about your agenda, because you're a candidate yourself. We'll have the borough president candidates at a future meeting, but talk with us a little bit about what you're up to with all of your assembly work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I was with you earlier to kind of buy a little time in the beginning of the meeting there. And Brad and I were on another Zoom earlier this evening as well. So, but I've enjoyed hearing from the candidates and the questions from IND members. So I'm going to just talk very briefly because it's a long night and I know you all want to get back to watch Donald Trump on TV, right? Or not. So just a couple of things, we have not been in Albany in a while. I think we may end up, we all hold out hope that in November we'll be able to go back and deal with revenue raising. Obviously, the election is going to be enormously important for a whole host of reasons. We need to raise revenue in New York State for sure, but we also need massive federal subsidy, right? We need just massive federal aid to the states. And that's clearly true for the MTA. It's true for our schools. It's true for really all of the subsidies that are needed to provide support for people who are struggling with regard to mortgage relief, with regard to rent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's something that I'm really focused on as well. And that's one of the reasons why I'm getting involved in changing this administration going forward. We're all really worried about the Supreme Court, but if we have a new administration that can actually think and care and feel, we'll be able to turn the corner from what we've been dealing with currently. A couple of things that I'm working on going forward. One is, I've got a bill to close a wage theft loophole that I'm working on with Andrew Gennardis. And I think that we'll be able to do it sooner than later. And I'm really hopeful that we can do it. If we come back in November, that we'll be able to do that as well. The other things that I'm looking at, of course, is the BQE. There was this expert panel. We really do believe that we need to look at the corridor. And so one of the issues is governance. Who's going to make those decisions? Who needs to be at the table? Who's going to be a contributor at the table? Who's going to make a difference in the way we look to have a sustainable, environmentally just and progressive solution to dealing with the BQE. Many of you know that I'm a fan of a tunnel, and that is still the only fiscally responsible and environmentally just way to go. But Brian and I are working on legislation that would create a governance mechanism to look at that corridor, right? Right now, a lot of what we're talking about, the BQE and the triple cantilever, it's under the city's control, but it still needs some state permissions. And part of what needs to be done is under state control. We really need to resolve that issue so that we're all working together and, rowing together in the same direction. Also, there's an issue that's sort of BQE related, and that's the Hick Street retaining wall, which is starting to list to one side, and it's not far from PS8. So we have kids outside now, learning outside on Poplar Street with a construction that'll be done to a retaining wall that's about 200 feet away. And so, we have been focusing with the DOT to be responsive to parents who have been reaching out to us, who are concerned about the proximity of the work and their kids who are out learning and playing. And that we have really engaged the city DOT to be more responsive, but also to engage more with the parents as they go through this process, because there really will be not a lot of work done for several months that would actually impact the school. But it's important for parents to know and have confidence in that, because obviously any kind of work like that could have environmental impacts. And of course, they will be shrouding it, et cetera, et cetera. But we wanted to make sure people know about that. So we're working closely on that. Obviously, from a budget point of view, we're working on issues for CUNY, food insecurity, really working on tuition relief. And, the state has had a number of hearings on the impacts of COVID. I know some of you have heard me talk about that before, but, we've really identified a number of issues that are it really came to the fore with regard to nursing homes and other congregate care facilities, as well as obviously the impacts to higher education and to the jobs and rent and food. And I think that we know what some of the things we need to do going forward that the legislature can act on. And I know that I'll be working closely with the chair of the Health Committee, for example, and Higher Education Committee moving forward. We really do listen to the people who come before us, the parents, the loved ones who lost people in COVID, the people who have kids in long-term care, for example, with significant disabilities who are part of their kids' care plans, how to make things better to limit the impacts to their loved ones. And the same thing with students, listening to the students at CUNY and SUNY and higher education about their experiences and what we can do to make things better for them. Obviously, one of the big issues is broadband, right? Broadband makes a difference in general education, in elementary and high school education. Our kids with disabilities are even more impacted by these limitations, but it's a huge issue for our students in higher education as well. And as many of you know, I've been working like a lunatic on the bar exam, and that was a big issue. Broadband is really an infrastructure issue. And one thing I had been trying to work on with our Ways and Means people is making websites be capital, right? Making broadband be capital, because we have more capital funding often than we do for other kinds of funding, right? For programmatic funding. So if we can make some things into that capital category, because today capital is broadband, capital is a website. And organizations, if they can get that kind of funding, it can help make a huge difference in their ability to provide their services. And so I think I will probably leave it at that. Obviously, we're working on housing. Those are all issues. Again, that's a real issue that is going to ultimately need a lot of federal support. The MTA, exactly. And so I will leave it at that. Obviously we have a lot of planning issues going on, and gun violence is increasing in our city and our state and really all over the country. And that is an issue I continue to be engaged in with communities throughout the borough. So I will leave it at that and certainly be happy to take a few questions. I see that we have another mayoral candidate that has joined us. So we want to hear from her more than me, probably.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Joanne. And I just saw Karen Johnson comment in the comments that there's been a lot of substance tonight. And I find that the mark of a very successful meeting. Lots of great substance from our folks. But as you mentioned, we've been joined by one final mayoral candidate, made it in the nick of time. General Dr. Lori Sutton, who is a retired brigadier general, the founding commissioner of the New York City Department of Veterans Services, also earned a Bronze Star for her actions in combat in Operation Desert Storm. She's running for mayor. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, General Sutton.
Oh, thank you so much, Jason. It's really great to be with you.
So if you want to just take a few minutes and talk us a little bit about your plans, and then we'll do a few questions at the end.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, listen, it's so good to connect with you all, during this time of COVID. Even if it's by Zoom, it's still great to be able to talk, to be able to listen, to be able to learn together. And Joanne, I greatly enjoyed hearing your comments and of all of the concerns and all of the things that are going on across our city that really depend upon our ability to work together. It seems to me that one of the most important things for any of us to be able to do right now, particularly those of us who are in positions of leadership or influencing leaders, is to be able to let go of everything that we thought we knew about our world just a few months ago, because much of it has changed, and it changes the way we look now at how do we restore the foundation of safety, safe schools, safe streets, safe jobs, so that really can be a foundation on which then all else can follow. So, one of the things that that really brought me into this race was seeing over the last several years how relationships, particularly between, I'll just point out the obvious, the mayor and the governor, the mayor and the president, as well as relationships across the city, just didn't seem to be as collegial or as constructive or as productive as they needed to be. For example, I'm a psychiatrist, so I pay a lot of attention to what happens in the mental health and the mental illness space. Well, as I saw more and more seriously mentally ill individuals suffering on the sidewalks and the subways and putting themselves at risk as well as those around them at risk, I knew that while the mayor was very deliberately bringing down the number of individuals who are incarcerated, the governor was at the same time reducing the number of hospital beds, the number of treatment programs, and those seams that never were really that tight just became really tattered. And as I watched what was going on in the city and sort of the polarization that started in particularly after the 2018 primary, and I just, I heard folks talking over each other and demonizing wealth and the wealthy and talking in ways that seemed to me were needlessly divisive and that we're not going to actually form the substrate that could bring us together as one city. And I kept looking for where's the leadership that can bring our city together and really lift us up and move us forward. I didn't see it. I spent the better part of a year, really learning as much as I could. And when I jumped into the race last November, I'll tell you, it's been a wild time. Who knew that COVID was coming? During COVID, during the pause, my Lori and I were contacted by folks saying, oh, you must be so glad you're not mayor right now. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'd give anything to be mayor right now and to be able to lead under these conditions in these times of crises. So I would say that, as mayor, the next mayor will be in a position where she will need to truly ensure that foundation of safety, to restore safe streets, safe schools, safe jobs, and will also need to be able to partner across the public, the private, the philanthropic, the social sectors, and to be able to take on huge challenges. The fiscal challenges we know are huge. And so, for example, one of the things that has recently come up is, is the Riker program, is the Riker plan as it's currently laid out, is it really feasible? And is this a time where we could perhaps just relook at that plan and figure out, is there a way that we could perhaps implement best practices when it comes to prison and rehabilitative complexes, and do it in a way that allows family members to have easy access, that allows us to use technology to be able to help the incarcerated individuals deal with the legal issues, but then to also just really make this a rehabilitative program that would be integrated with community programs and reentry strategies from the time someone enters into the system. I want to, really work with the community to put justice back into what is now a criminal legal system. That leads to homelessness. Homelessness, is still with us. It's tougher than it has ever been. And I think that the relationship between serious mental illness and homelessness is one that we absolutely have to knit together, and to do it in a way that looks at this as a system. So I'm a psychiatrist. I've got a lot of ideas about that. DJ Jaffe, some of you may know him. He was just such a gem, such a giant in this space. He just left us a few weeks ago. But I think
thank you very much, General. If I think maybe we'll do a couple of questions if that's okay with you.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Alyssa, what do we have for questions?
Yeah, let's see. So where did it go? Oh, here it is. Sorry. This one is from Julia. Recent reports have found that New York City public schools are the most segregated in the country. How do you feel about addressing this and working to ensure our city's children are afforded equal access to great education?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of talk about the education system, and I think that a lot of the action from the administration and frankly from the chancellor in recent months has been needlessly divisive. Where I come down on this very, very important issue is that I think that when it comes to, for example, the specialized high schools that have been such a topic of discussion, I think we need to create more of them, particularly in the underserved areas, particularly in Queens and the Bronx. I think we need to double down on our gifted and talented programs. I think we also need to develop partnerships with the private sector. So for example, can you imagine converting schools into community centers that would have year-round programming and for which the private sector perhaps could adopt schools, and families across the city could adopt a family, and we could really knit relationships together and get beyond what has been such a charged divide between, you know, the charter schools and the conventional public schools. I think it's a both and approach. And I think that in the near term, if we use the Regents exams as the admission to the specialized high schools, that draws from the classroom curriculum, it will help even the playing field. It will help us get more racial and ethnic diversity. And we can also, I don't agree with the mayor's plan. I think he was thinking about 6 or 8% of school kids to at the top of their classes to go straight into the specialized high schools. I'd say let's start with 2%. Let's see how we do there, and let's learn together. But certainly we know that we've got kids across our city who are bright, who are capable, and currently the school system is not serving their needs well. And I think that the more we can invest in them and help them with paths to experiences, to adventures, to exposure, so that they can really discover interests and develop them from an early stage and develop those partnerships, I think that we can have a much different outcome, as well as a much different level of engagement and debate across the city.
Absolutely. Maybe one final question, Alyssa?
Sure. Okay, so the next mayor will take office at a difficult moment in New York City history. What opportunities do you see for reimagining life in New York based on any changes you've seen over the past 10 months?
I'll tell you what, I think that this, as difficult as this time is, I think it's a really exciting time. I mentioned first what I call the resilience and recovery safety triad. That's the safe schools, safe streets, safe jobs. I think that has to be job one. Nothing goes well without people both feeling safe and actually being safe. We've got a lot of work to do there. But then we also have the opportunity to partner in ways that, for example, why shouldn't be, since we started out as the epicenter of this pandemic, we didn't choose it, it came to us. But why in the world wouldn't we be able to become the global hub of excellence for example, blended learning, for technology investment? I heard Joanne talk about broadband. I mean, NYCHA should be the first target to be able to get learning environments and broadband all across our city and make sure that not just the school kids, but their families have access to that. It's a lifeline. I think that we have the opportunity to, as I said before, to partner with the private sector, apprenticeships and sponsorships and mentorships. For example, right now, I'm just getting ready to put up a plan for reopening schools that would maximize in-person learning and that would take an all of city approach. So, instead of the kids getting food that's on a shelf someplace from out of state, why not harness the restaurants across the 5 boroughs to help provide nutritious food? Why not bring in Broadway actors and musicians and stage designers and help juice up the teaching? Why not reach out to retired teachers and college kids, graduate students who might be incentivized to take a gap year and be tutors? Why not reach out to the education schools across the city and provide curriculum, just as we did with nursing students and medical students for the height of the pandemic? So I think there's so much opportunity here, but it's going to require all of us not just talking to each other, but listening. And I think that there's a new level of receptiveness among the private sector, and particularly, real estate, banking, finance, media, entertainment, as more awareness of the racial factors and the ways in which our social contract have not served us. I think there's a real opportunity to partner with the private sector in a way that's meaningful and that really meets the needs and the strengths of some of our most vulnerable communities. And I want to lead those conversations and really amplify and accelerate those efforts.
Thank
We
you.
have something that nobody else in the entire world has. We have the world here in our city. And if we just invest in those kids of color, and this is what I did in the Army for 30 years, taking kids who came from places like some of the toughest neighborhoods here in New York, and to see them blossom into disciplined, proud, and accomplished professionals. That's what I want to bring to New York City.
Well, it's been a privilege to listen to you tonight. We really appreciate you joining IND. And you're our last candidate of the night. So I want to say thank you to the folks who tuned in all night. I want to particularly thank the IND folks who helped us out with this call. It takes a lot of people to put this together. I want to thank Danielle Zuckerman and Alyssa Meyer, Tyler, Rocky, Lynn Hill, who's helping us take attendance, to Josh for being here, Joanne. I want to thank Zelner Myrie for speaking to us and being here. Thank you, Seamus Campbell, for the tech. Trying to get this many people in and out without many real tech problems is a pretty good accomplishment. So thank you, Seamus. And then I'll thank all of our candidates. We heard tonight from Eric Adams, from Sean Donovan, from Diane Morales, from Lori Sutton, from Maya Wiley, Brad Lander, from Kevin Parker, and from Assemblymember David Weprin. Thank you to all of you for sharing this time with us. We will be meeting up to discuss all of the races in January, making our endorsements at that point. Just a quick reminder of Saturday, Max Rose, if you want a phone bank, if you want to canvas with us, you can check out the links that Tyler Rocky has dropped in the comments already. Monday night, we'll be making phone calls for Andrew Gunardis. These guys are being assailed by outside money that are just frankly lying about them on television. So we're going to go out there and have their backs. Thank you to everybody who helped out tonight and who tuned in. And we really appreciate it. Make sure you leave a comment or like so we know that you're here. And I think that closes us out. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jason, for running a fantastic meeting. That was great.
Oh, we said 2 hours. We're at 1 minute and 1 hour, 59 minutes. So here we are.
Well done.
That's fantastic. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.